Hey guys, it's Frozenballz today, and welcome to another episode of Minmaxer's Playground. Today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite frames of Warframe, Mesa. Now, ever since Mesa was released, she's been through a slew of changes. Originally, she was built for Peacemaker. A lot of people used her on places like Draco, and other places such as Hyricon, Triton, etc, etc. Despite that, I've always used Mesa as a tanky frame. Now, Mesa's visual appearance, her art style, her playstyle, and her abilities have always appealed to me, even when I first heard about her, which is one of the reasons why she became my favorite frame to this day. Having said that, despite all the changes that have come in, there is one specific build that I use for Mesa, and that is more or less it. Now, within that build, there's a myriad of mods which you can use to completely min-max out the Mesa and squeeze out Mesa's maximum potential. Now, Mesa is a range tank. What I mean by that is, when she has her Shadow Shield up, she will be taking no damage so long as you've got enough power strength in it. It takes 130% power strength to get 95% damage reduction with Shadow Shield. So long as you've got Shadow Shield up with 95% damage reduction, you're not going to be taking that much damage to begin with from range sources. This includes bombard missiles and other projectiles that will just bounce off of the Mesa and go and hit the nearest enemy itself. However, this does not protect you against melee enemies, and it does not protect you from AoE explosions from explosive weapons itself. If a bombard missile is deflected and it hits a nearby wall and it explodes, and you are within the explosion radius, you will take damage. If a melee enemy comes within range and manages to hit you with their melee weapons, you will take full damage as well. If the damage is high enough, it can kill you outright. With the release of Mesa's augments, there is one particular augment of note: Staggering Shield. Now, Staggering Shield is a very good augment because what it does is, at max rank, it has a chance to reflect bullets with a 50% chance of staggering enemies as well. So that is now your first layer of CC. The second layer of crowd control comes through using Shooting Gallery. Now, Shooting Gallery works in a couple of different ways. It applies a damage percentage multiplier, it's duration based, and it's also affected by power range. High power range for Shooting Gallery is very important because the higher the range, the further away you can crowd control enemies by jamming their weapons. Jammed enemies means they're not doing damage to you, so that applies another layer of crowd control to you. Which is why Mesa has such a high survivability, especially with this particular build. I've always played Mesa as a tanky frame. Since Peacemaker is now affected by secondary mods, you don't have to actually change anything in your builds. You can still keep the same build and still be just as tanky and pump out that damage at the same time. Now let's talk about the build itself. In this particular build, there are specific reasons why I use certain mods the way I do as opposed to using completely maxed out mods. The reason for this is purely because of min-maxing. Combining a rank 7 narrow-minded with a maxed out cunning, drift and stretch completely cancels out the range loss, in fact gives you slightly more range while giving you a big amount of duration. And on top of that, you also got prime continuity to increase your duration even further. Intensify is more than enough to increase your power strength to 130%, which is what you need for 95% damage reduction. Streamline adds more efficiency. Prime Flow adds a bigger power pool for both Peacemaker as well as activating your other abilities itself. Staggering Shield is the augment which adds a secondary layer of crowd control for enemies who are hit by the reflected bullets and is very, very handy to use. Handspring is a personal mod. It is basically the last mod slot which you can put whatever you want in it. I personally like using Handspring over anything else. Since you have so much damage reduction and you're always on the move, you don't really need quick thinking, you don't really need vitality or any other survivability mod because, you know, as long as you're moving around and you're not getting hit by enemies or especially getting hit by AoE or melee-based enemies, you're not going to be taking that much damage to begin with. This is more of a run-and-gun, tanky / damage-dealing build, and because of this particular reason, it is min-maxed for maximum duration, efficiency, range, and strength within this build, which complements all powers equally. Now, at first glance, people may say that this build has not been min-maxed. Let me point out it actually has been. Now, within the mods available to us, I have a maxed out power pool. I have a good amount of efficiency without sacrificing any duration. I have a good amount of duration, and to offset the range loss, I have enough range mods added in as well. At the same time, I've got enough power strength to make sure I have a 95% damage reduction, and I've got a second layer of crowd control added through the augment for Shatter Shield itself. Handspring is another utility mod, which just increased survivability even further. Using mods such as Transient Fortitude, Overextended, Blind Rage, and even Fleeting Expertise is not really recommended in this particular case because the bonuses they give you, while they are handy, the negatives that they come in with are not ideal for min-maxing. In this particular case, this build has been min-maxed out as best as possible to allow you to be just as tanky as possible and dish out that damage. Since Peacemaker is now affected by your secondary weapon mods itself, you don't really need more power strength on your build either. It may be prudent to point out that Peacemaker is completely silent, So if you were to do a stealth run, you could actually kind of get away with it. With this particular build, since your drain isn't that high, you can activate Peacemaker and use it in conjunction with a Huros Kubro. The Huros makes you invisible, and as soon as you're invisible, you can use your Peacemaker and kill everything and maintain your stealth multiplier if you're interested in trying a different way of doing a stealth exterminate. In terms of focus schools, you've got a couple of options. When you're using Peacemaker, you will not be generating energy with Xenuric. On top of that, since it's a range tank frame, you're not really going to be making full use of Naramon either. I mean, you can kind of get away with using Xenuric as well, in between Peacemaker itself, but I think there's a better alternative to this, Madurai. Madurai's passives increase your IPS damage by up to 30%, and this applies to Peacemaker as well. By focusing on the tanking side of this, you can actually get away with using Xenuric. With this particular build, you have Shooting Gallery, which lasts for 68 seconds, and Shatter Shield, which lasts for 56 seconds. With a maximized Xenuric active, by the time the duration for both of these abilities finishes, you will have regened all of your power which you used to cast these abilities to begin with, in which case you are recycling all your power, and which is why Xenuric actually works just as well as Madurai. In terms of arcanes, as you know, I use Arcane Energize on pretty much anything because I use it on a Siandana. The alternative, which you could technically use, or rather which you can kind of get away with using, is Arcane Avenger and Arcane Precision. Arcane Precision is interesting because Arcane Precision affects Peacemaker. The way Arcane Precision works is when you get a headshot, you get increased secondary weapon damage. And this also works with Peacemaker. So in that case, Precision works actually very, very nicely with Mesa. Arcane Avenger provides extra critical chance when the player is damaged. This complements Arcane Precision very, very nicely. So in an ideal world, using Arcane Avenger and Precision together for Mesa is ideal. In terms of weapons, there's not specifically a weapon itself that you need, but it's more about the mods which you use on a weapon. Peacemaker is affected by secondary weapon mods, in which case you definitely want to be using a weapon which complements both Peacemaker as well as the weapon itself. In this case, my personal weapon of choice is Axe Stiletto, Axe Magnus, or even the Cyanide Gammacore. Weapons like the Axe Magnus have a both high crit chance and multiplier as well as a high status percentage. Because of this, you can build the weapon for both status as well as crit, and this benefits Peacemaker since Peacemaker inherits the secondary weapon mods itself. In this particular case, I'm using Hornet Strike, Barrel Diffusion, and Lethal Torrent, and on top of that I'm also using Prime Target Cracker and Prime Pistol Gambit for the crit damage. In terms of elemental mods, I'm using Primed Heated Charge with Pathogen Rounds for gas damage, or Primed Heated Charge with Convulsion for radiation damage. The gas damage build Peacemaker works exceptionally well, especially when you combine it with stuff like with Arcane Precision and Arcane Avenger, since, they do extra damage and they actually contribute towards the gas procs itself. And with a weapon like the Axe Magnus, since you've got a 55% status chance with this particular build, you proc those status effects pretty often as well. With the combination of Gunslinger and Lethal Torrent, your Peacemaker becomes like a machine gun and there's just a constant spray of bullets going towards the enemies, and the ramp up is very, very quickly as well, allowing you to reach that maximum damage for Peacemaker very, very quickly. And this particular build also makes the weapon very effective because high crit damage, high status, and just being able to pump out that damage is very, very ideal. I don't actually use Ballistic Battery, but as an honorable mention, I'll just talk about it briefly. Ballistic Battery, the way it works is you activate the ability, and as you kill enemies with your primary weapon, secondary weapon, Peacemaker, whichever weapon you decide to choose, it basically stores a charge. At 100% charge, when you press the number 1 key to activate Ballistic Battery again, that charge is stored into your next shot, which when you fire does extra damage. I mean, it's a nice complementary skill, but it's not really a vital skill or anything important. You can go right ahead and play the game without actually using Ballistic Battery altogether. An interesting thing to note is Shatter Shield also protects you from hooks from Ancients and Scorpions itself. However, it does not protect you from the AoE knockdown blasts which heavy units tend to do. Nor does it protect you from the blast procs happening by when you deflect bombard missiles. Even though the missiles have been deflected, the blast proc may still apply. Peacemaker has a damage split of 50% impact, 25% puncture, and 25% slash. It also has a 300% critical damage multiplier with 25% critical chance, a 10% status chance, and 100% accuracy. What I'm trying to point out here is when you combine this with a weapon like the Axe Magnus and you use the mods which I listed earlier on, you can actually use Peacemaker as a CC ability. Instead of using radiation or gas, you can use blast. With a blast build, you can have enemies permanently on their back by shooting them over and over, and as the blast procs keep hitting, the enemies will remain on their back, and it works as a CC ability just as well. So there you have it, that's my Mesa build, completely min-maxed out. Thank you very much for watching yet another episode. This is Frozenballz, and again, if you enjoyed what you saw, make sure you leave a like, a comment, a subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.